More than just stealing gears. It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay, hello. Welcome to the carousel on this beautiful Wednesday in late August. We have with us today Danny Wolf, who is launching a new magazine called Hard R. And who knows what that's a reference to? No one will ever be able to tell. But welcome to the show, Danny.
Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
For sure. So you're kind of an OG in our whole scene, but what prompted you to launch a magazine that I think is a fiction magazine?
Yeah, so Hard Reset is the actual name of the magazine. The Hard R thing's got a little inside joke, in our marketing. I looked out there and I didn't really see anybody writing for young guys. I see plenty of people writing at them, telling them how to think, how to feel. And, I'm a freelance writer. So I was looking at the stats and something like 70% of fiction reading is done by women under 40, right? And I don't think it's a problem that young guys aren't reading. I think it's that nothing is being written specifically for them. So they're reading like classic literature, philosophy, they're reading BAP and all this other stuff. The reason why you don't have more young guys reading what's coming out of traditional publishing is because who wants to spend $20 to read a book that says that you're to blame for all the world's problems, right?
Mhm.
So I was talking to a few other guys in the alt-lit scene a few months back. And we're like, well, why don't we just create a space where we can get everyone in alt-lit under one roof? Rambo Van Halen, his head, maybe a Howling Mutant, all of these guys, worst boyfriend ever, and just right under one roof. It's not really a political thing. Like, I don't care if you call it right wing, it's biased, but we got folks from all across the spectrum that are contributors. But it's more just to harken back to a time when writing punched you in the face instead of patting you on the back, Everything coming out these days is like therapy diary entries, guys, just fiction. And so we're just trying to put something out that's got a little bit more authenticity to it. We call it Rust Belt realism.
Rust Belt realism. Um, you know what my least favorite genre of contemporary annoying male writing is?
What's that?
Is people who write about their writing. Like who are always giving you an update. Like it's always like, oh, here's an update on my writing. Like it's like a disease. It's like my writing is really bothering me today. Let me give you a whole update on my writing. It's like, dude, nobody
Essays.
gives a fuck. Nobody cares about your writing journey, bro. It's so fucking amateur. I'm just like, shut up. Why are you telling me about your writing? It's like, is there anything gayer than that? Is there any great writer in history who like, let's check in on my writing journey? Like, fuck you. I hate that shit.
It always comes off like an OnlyFans creator trying to give you a peek behind the scenes and pretend they're your friend and get you
Yeah.
to subscribe. Yeah.
It's also like another big thing I see with these right wing guys. They decide because this is, I come from artists, so I was very lucky to see what a failed artist track looks like in my life. Most people don't see that. And so they think that because they've chosen to write, that means they're good. Like they think because I'm saying I'm a writer, what I write must be worthwhile. How could it not be? you know? And they're just like, "Oh yeah, I'm a writer. I just write, so therefore I'm a writer." It's like, "No, dude, you're not a writer until you get paid to do it." At least in my opinion. You know, you got to get paid somewhere. And once you start getting paid, then you can call yourself a writer. Before that, you're a fucking amateur. According to me.
I spent several years getting paid to write the most boring shit on earth because that's what the demand was. That's what they paid for. You know,
What were you writing?
this work correspondence, all kinds of stuff. So my first big client as a freelance writer was a political action committee. Go figure. But luckily, it was one that supports Thomas Massey and Rand Paul. So
Yeah.
I can deal with that. So I ended up helping them take their little humble Substack up to like 100,000 subscribers.
Really? Dude, that's
Yeah.
sick.
Rand
That's
Paul
great.
review. But some of the writing, man, God, I was slogging through that shit for years, you know, putting that stuff out there. Everyone wants to write something cool. Everyone wants to write, you know, the next American novel. But I think the discipline you get from having to write stuff that your client will pay for is not necessarily right up your alley. I think that is what the missing element is with a lot of guys.
100%.
You know, I came
100%.
into writing in the weirdest fucking way. I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps. So I got out of the Marine Corps, and my last deployment, I had just the journaling shit, just kind of diverted off on the page, get it off my chest. And when I started going to VA, seeing the wizard, you know, we call the shrink, she's like, well, you should journal, you know, talk about some of this stuff in group therapy. And I'm like, well, I got stacks of journals from Afghanistan. So I started sharing some of that stuff in group, and everyone started sort of, you know, getting wet in the eyes and saying, you need to publish this somewhere. So I contracted for a little bit for the DOD when I got out, and then COVID slowed that down, of course, laid a bunch of us off. So I got into bail bonds. You know, it was the only other job that I could think of that involved some kind of cool guy stuff, but I knew I didn't have it in me to be a cop. You know, I'm not politically correct. So I just journal my stories about going out chasing bail skippers and built a kind of a platform on that, and then built out my freelance writing about the boring bullshit you can imagine. But
What was the
I don't know,
boring bullshit? But wait, what was the boring bullshit? That was copywriting, like shit
I've done a
for.
little bit of copywriting, you know, sales copy and web copy. I try to stay away from that stuff. It pays good, but it's mind numbing. Most of it was journalism. You know, I'd get all these either PACs or think tanks or newspapers that would just want a freelancer so they could pay you less.
Yes.
And, you know, journalism to me, I know it's the traditional path to writing, but regurgitating events that have already happened, that you're just paraphrasing someone else's reporting, I hate that shit.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. That's why copywriting, in my opinion, is a far superior art to journalism. Journalism in today's world is fucking horseshit. And even when it's good, it's still not artful. Whereas at least copy, you know, when in the world of advertising where I'm in, at least there's an artfulness to it. You know, at least you're being clever with the turn of phrase. You're thinking of the concept, you're thinking of the meaning behind something. Whereas I was a journalist, I was a shithole journalist. You know, I was Vice, I was LA Weekly. You know, I did that. And, you know, I did some real shit that was good, but most of it is just garbage. It's just garbage pail bullshit. So I think that your experience growing a Substack for Massey, etc., that is so valuable, man. Like that's what these other guys, they don't have that. It's like doing it commercially, to me, that's how you cut your teeth. That's how you go from a, you know, guy talking about it to a guy doing it. And the commercial element of it, everybody looks down on this. They say, "Oh, the commercialism." The commercialism, you play it as it lays, right? You live in the jungle you live in. This is the jungle we live in. And the commercial part tells you you're in the right part of the jungle. You know, like the fact that you were able to do that for money is like, that tells you that you are a writer, in my opinion, versus somebody
That's
who
my
just
full-time
spends
job
all day.
now.
What?
That's what my full-time job now is, just freelance writing. And, you know,
Keep doing it.
it sucks because I always tell guys it's best-selling author, not best writing author. So you got to learn how to market a little bit. And I think every writer is secretly a psychologist if they're a good writer. I mean, you have to be able to analyze people in order to write a convincing character. You know, sure, your protagonist can be based on yourself, but all of your other characters in the plot, you have to be able to put yourself in someone's shoes and understand what their motivations would be. So I think there's a lot of overlap when it comes to psychology and marketing and fiction. So I mean, you're figuring out a way to tell truth through a story that isn't truthful. Whereas in journalism, you're reporting facts with a hidden agenda.
Yes, and not only that, you're uh most of the time in today's world, you're not even doing the alpha work, like the alpha work, not alpha male, alpha in the sense of alpha, the way that tech people mean it, meaning something new, right? The alpha is something that no one else has discovered yet. It's something that has as of yet been put on the internet. Alpha now comes from posters. It comes from random shit, right? And the journalist, like Taylor Lorenz, it sits around and finds other people's alpha and just compiles it into a little chart with her little angle, right? It's like people are getting married in micro internet weddings. She just makes some bullshit up. She never leaves. She never leaves her fucking 4x4, like, Zoloft room. And that's what most of journalism is today. And it's so sad because you're right. I mean, that the male side of journalism was always the gonzo. And dude, this is why I'm very excited about your magazine. I'm fundamentally a magazine writer and reader. Like, I love a great profile of somebody who goes and hangs out with somebody and actually lives it. I'm a gonzo guy. I mean, like, I don't actually love Hunter S. Thompson. My favorite writer of all time is Charles Bukowski. But Bukowski is fundamentally a gonzo guy. So, yeah, anyway, I completely agree with you that this is where journalism has gone. So, in any case, your magazine is all fiction, though, correct?
Yeah, it's a literary fiction magazine. So it's not a political essay magazine. You're not going to be seeing us talking about postmodernism unless it's through a plot. So
By the
we
way,
even
there's many more people watching this than is reflected because for some reason the numbers are not showing up for Twitter, which is most people watch it on Twitter, and the YouTube is the only platform that is showing right now. So usually there's like many more people watching this. I don't know why. I think it was because I came in and out. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
So we got people, sort of libertarian normies. We've got people from all over. It's probably Groypers, Baptists, everyone from all spaces is welcome. And we're sort of like neutral ground, but it's also where they can test their mettle. If you want to argue your ideas, argue it through the fiction. It's sort of the lesson that I learned years ago with all of these political spaces and movements. Everyone's always debating, and I've never understood that because I always think it's stupid. You debate with friends, right? You have a small disagreement on how to execute, but you have a shared vision and values. So you want to hone your ideas to come to an agreement where you're both aligned. That's the purpose of a debate. And I see all these guys debating in order to get clicks. And to me, it's very, it's a low vibe. It's very childish. Either fist fight about it or it's not important enough to debate about. So I was looking at that years ago and I started just using fiction as a vessel to reach out to people outside of our spaces. And it had a really positive reaction. I even had a few liberal people hollering back at me, sent the email saying, I don't really agree with you per se, but you made some good points and I like the way that you wrote it. So what I figured out was, in a debate, you have to have a loser to have a winner, and nobody wants to lose. You're never going to argue someone into agreeing with you. But there's never been a story written where the reader was the villain. So you can use fiction to communicate your ideas and sort of get past those defense mechanisms we all have on the internet. Because you're not attacking the reader, you're attacking the idea. A lot of these debates, they're not actually arguing the argument, they're arguing the audience. They're trying to win the audience instead of actually being right. And everyone's already decided who the winner is ahead of time. It's always their chosen idol. So this is kind of a place for us to say, hey, you want to get out over your ideas and put them through the fire and see what comes out stronger. Submit it to the magazine, and you can shit on the editors and anybody you want. We'll let it go. But we
Yeah,
bring hard.
but dude, how many pieces of short fiction are you yourself reading? Like, do you
A lot.
read?
I read a novel a week as a bare minimum. That's just my gym membership. A novel a week, a serious novel a week. And I mean read it like a writer. I'm not just reading the words. If you're not using sticky notes and highlighting, you're not reading like a writer. There's a big difference. So I'm trying to teach these guys some of these principles. Some of them are already, leagues ahead of the average. I look at Mishima's head and his writing is just fantastic. But we have sort of our own little writers workshop that we call Write Club. And what I did is I'm trying to help out the younger version of myself and give them what I never had, like a crash course MFA without all the bullshit, without the tuition costs, but give them the discipline. Because like a writing class is going to make or break you, man. You get in, and in the first 6 months, it's just slogging through novel after novel, week after week, bare minimum, and learning how to fill the margins with red ink. So I'm trying to teach these guys all those principles, but in a way where the working class forklift certified guy can have access to it.
So, what's something you've read recently that's good in your novel practice?
Right now, I just read Three Body Problem.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
How was that?
So Dark Forest was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Loved it. Loved the idea. The writing itself wasn't groundbreaking, but the plot element.
Well, it's in translation, isn't it? It's Chinese.
Yes.
Isn't it Chinese?
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
so
surprised he actually got that, published over there with the CCP, because the depictions of the struggle sessions.
Right. I know. Well, I saw the show. I didn't read the book, but I saw the show, and you got to give it to the Game of Thrones guys for putting that first and foremost. You rarely see that.
You're never going to get an adaptation that's true to the source. Anyone who's worked around Hollywood, you're not going to get a contract signed where you as the author get any kind of creative control whatsoever. This doesn't happen. But I think they stayed pretty true to the original as much as they could. But I highly recommend the books.
Nice. Okay. Well, but what about, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to compete with, I mean, you're not really, but there's a great book, by the way, that you really should read called it's by David Comfort. It's called The Insider's Guide to Publishing. And it breaks down, it's really funny, actually. It's a fucking hilarious book. And it breaks down like the economics of publishing. And it talks a lot about Tin House and Paris Review, which are, ostensibly the top publishers in the space that you're trying to be, which is literary fiction, but not novels. You're going to be doing short stories, which is a whole different form. And short stories, in my opinion, are extremely difficult. A really good short story, the New Yorker, I've been reading the New Yorker my entire life. I never read the fiction, ever, because it's just hard. It's hard. A novel is very different. A novel is so much easier to digest than a short story, right? Because for some reason, a short story, it's a weird medium, isn't it?
So a short story, you have much less time to capture the reader, right?
Right.
You introduce conflict right away. And I think there's a very specific type of reader who enjoys short stories. What I come across on the writer side is I can find 10,000 guys that can write decent short stories. I can't find more than 10 that can string those into a linear plot and construct a novel that's worth a damn. A lot of it is just finding a decent short story writer that can write themes outside of just whatever transpires to the page every day. It's easy for guys to write what they want to write, but the moment you add them a theme or a prompt, you lose about 90% of it.
So you're saying that it's much easier to find somebody who can crank out a short story than somebody that can put together an entire novel, and the novel is the hard part.
So if you take 10,000, and this is from statistics, so if you take 10,000 writers in fiction, about 64 of them will finish a manuscript. And out of those 64, maybe 5 will publish it, even self-publish, out of 10,000.
Wow.
So you can find guys that can crank out short stories. Right now, there's sort of this like leftover remnant of 4chan and Reddit where you have the confessionalism and the auto fiction.
Mhm.
I think that's starting to go away, but it's still sort of trending right now. And that stuff's, there's a lot of people can pump that out every day. And, they can throw a little diary entry that is part real, part fiction, and they can pump that out.
Then that's auto fiction, right? That's auto fiction. Yeah.
This is, we got 3 homeless writers as our regular contributors that are out there. And I don't mean homeless like bums, I mean like they're homeless living out of vans while working a full-time job.
Yeah.
And they probably have more interesting lived experience to write about than most of the people graduating from Ivy League. The biggest problem that I see on the traditional side. So all these people are from like Connecticut, California, all grew up in the same schools, go to the same country club. They all go to Ivy League MFA program, same frats, same sororities. And then they get out and they all work with the alumnus network to get hired at the same journals and magazines. And they're all focused on what the focus groups are pushing, which is the same cookie cutter bullshit that we see, the bean flicker fiction and all that stuff.
Yep.
But they don't ever take any time between college and writing to actually just go live their lives.
Totally.
Bukowski brought up, right? So he spent time homeless and living in, opium dens. He lived an interesting life. That's half the equation. It doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. If you never lived a story worth writing about, you're never going to make anything that's going to be groundbreaking.
Yeah, I completely agree, of course. I totally agree with what you're saying, but it's like the two things have been pulled completely apart. It's like on the one hand, you have people who don't live at all. As we're saying, the journalism, the journalist who never leaves his house, right? That's on the mainstream regime side, is the journalist who never leaves his house, the MFA who's never done anything. You see these people, even on our side. I really want to say names, but I'm not going to say any names. But you see some of these guys who are, and they're not right wing, but they're sort of anti-woke-ish, and they write
safe.
What?
Because that's safe now. You can
Well,
be
exactly. Well, now that's a little spice. It's the littlest bit of spice. And they write these fucking pathetic, elegies to their working class friends. I grew up with so many working class people. I'm so working class. And they're trying to dig into somebody else's lived experience. They're like that journalist, sitting in their fucking house. But you're totally right. Those people are cockpit life people. They never leave. They never leave the confines of their nice little life, right? But what they are talented at is the game. They're good at the game. And the game is 50% of it. The game is 50% of the equation, whether we like it or not. So they're over-indexing on the game, under-indexing on the substance. But then our guys are doing the total opposite. And they're, did you read Breakfast with the Dirt Cult? What'd you think of that?
Okay. and
no,
I don't
not
want
for
to.
you. Not for you. Why didn't you like it? Because you're a veteran as well. So
I've seen that formula used so many fucking times in the vet bro community, all over in our spaces. There's sort of this weird thing that's happening in alt-lit where I don't know if everyone's chasing the field bucks, they want to be another twink in his harem or what. I don't know, but I see everything consolidated.
Just another twink in his harem.
Everyone's inadvertently taking money to be a fucking mouthpiece for Palantir now, and every all these little indie.
Are you trying to say you don't love Palantir? Are you trying to say you don't love it?
I want to burn all my bridges with Peter Thiel right now
Because
Yeah,
I have the phone number. This was your chance, and you just burned it all down. No,
no, we already
bro,
had
not
someone
true,
make
not true,
we already
not
had
true.
a cash offer.
Really? Wait, for what?
Yeah. The magazine. And I mean, we
Damn.
only launched back in June. I mean, we're already at almost 1,000 subscribers in 2 months.
On
So the momentum.
Substack. On Substack.
Yeah. So we have the digital version and then we have the print magazine. We want to kind of lead people to the print magazine, get people reading an actual zine again. So it's kind of got this 90s vibe to it, but we're using Substack as our primary open submission platform. And then the cream of the crop exclusive stuff goes to the print magazine every quarter. Kind of the mission is to get young guys reading and writing again, right? So it's not about monetization. I don't care if this ever becomes profitable. I'll keep throwing money at it, whatever. It's about making an impact. So we're on TikTok. I finally had to fucking break down and make a TikTok.
Wait, so what do you
And
do
we
on
make-
TikTok?
So we take little clips of the most powerful part of a short story, and then we'll either have the writer themselves narrating it.
Love it.
We had a guy go out
Love it.
with a ski mask in the middle of like an abandoned shopping mall or something with hard reset tagged behind him, just reading his own story, but the most compelling 45-second hook. And then we'll throw in a little bit of graphics, clip it up and put it out there. So, because I was looking at, where are the young guys at? They're on TikTok. Maybe they're reading on
100%.
Maybe they're listening to podcasts, Joe Rogan. But your normie Zoomer guys, they're on TikTok because they don't have anything to read. So we figured we'd go where they are and we would break this stuff down into easily digestible, bite-sized content.
Love it, dude.
Visual format. Camcorder from the 2000s, so it stands out. And just put it out there with like a little bit of Fight Club vibe, not to try to like be Fight Club, but that's the vibe that young guys are calling for. They want a Fight Club that's not written by some gay liberal guy. They're all pissed off about the economy. They're pissed off about H-1Bs taking their jobs. So they're looking for someone to give them permission, essentially, to rise up at this point. So we're trying to write to those themes and address things like masculinity, all this other stuff. But we're mainly just trying to give them, of course, sit down for 10 minutes and actually read it. Everyone's neurons are burned out from TikTok 15-second clips. So we're sort of trying to psyop them back into reading literature. Get them to sit down for 45 seconds to listen to one of these writers, lead them to a Substack of short stories, and then slowly get them into reading something more challenging that's more long form. Rambo just put out his book.
Yes,
So
I have it right here. I just received it.
it is amazing. I don't know if you read it yet, but it is
Well,
great.
but this is not fiction.
Well, it's sort of a memoir with, I don't know how much little tools he used to spice it up. So, but the themes that he addresses, I think, are great and would resonate with people, Gen X all the way down to Zoomers.
It is a nice book. It is. I will say it is. It's a feels good. It's a good product. And then we also have here Frontier Magazine, also a very good product. And this is where we have a bunch of ads in these things, and I write for this. I write Gonzo articles for this. I wrote one on AmFest. This is one of our ads in here.
It's very clean, minimalist. I like it.
Yeah, no, you know what, man? What tells me that you know what you're doing is that you're doing this TikTok thing. I love that, man. That is so fucking exactly it. Like, we need to mimic Book Talk, Book Talk, which is just for fat bean flickers, as you've called them, and just do that for our guys. And you're right, like the dude on the construction site, like the one like dude on there who's like kind of angsty and smart, he's gonna digest that and he's gonna find some dope quote from one of your stories, and then he's gonna come in. And it's like end around, dude. It's like that's what we need. We need to do exactly what you're saying, which is like end around. You have to modify the literary sphere to the contemporary social media scroll, and then you can capture the masses. I think that's exactly what we have to do. And it's very cool. It's very cool that you're doing that. I need to follow you on TikTok. I need to see what kind of stuff you're doing.
And like we can all complain about vocabulary is shrinking, attention span is declining towards zero. You can bitch about this stuff all day, but at the end of the day, either you're doing something to fix it or you're
Exactly.
just,
Or not. Exactly.
you
And
know,
you can't avoid it. This is what I tell everybody. The scroll is it, man. This is it. You might as well fucking get on board. It's like the TV. When the TV came out, everybody complained, TV. Okay, you can complain all fucking day, but this is it. You deal with it or you don't. That's the scroll. Think about how weird the scroll is. The scroll is this weird technology. It's very odd. It's this thing that sits in your hand and it doesn't show you TV. It shows you this interactive like video game, where that has bits of content and then your ability to interact with it in this sort of like rudimentary way. It's a very odd thing. It's like like the video games and movies they met. And that's what the scroll is. And in the future, in 500 years, they're going to look back at this time as the birth of the scroll. The birth of this weird fucking thing. And it's like, it doesn't mean that novels have to be boiled down into TikTok. I mean, there's always going to be a room for novels. That will always exist, as long as human beings exist. But you have to modify your shit for this world. You have to do it. Otherwise, you're just an idiot. You know what I mean? At least in my opinion.
well, it's like I look back, you had Mike Ma with zero budget, 20 years old. He put together Harassment Architecture, sold over 50,000 copies.
He sold 50,000 copies of that?
Over 50,000 copies.
What?
He sold it with a little bitty Twitter account and shilling it on Fortune.
No. How the
He didn't
fuck
get
did he? How do you know he sold 50,000? Do you know that for a fact?
You can look at the analytics.
Damn, he sold
50,000.
50,000.
So that's more than Bronze Age Mindset, The Pussy, any of those. You take all of the outlets seen together. Baltic, Worst Boyfriend Ever, Ryan Specs, all these guys. You take all the copies that they've
Right.
sold their entire career,
Oh yeah,
and it's
way
only
more.
a tiny fraction of how many copies of Harassment Architecture and Gothic Violence sold. And he
That's
did it
insane.
self-published. He did it all on his own, and he did all the artwork for the books on his own.
Well, an incredible designer. He's a much better designer. I tried to hire him because I hire designers all the time. He's a fantastic designer. 10 out of 10. I think the White House account now is basically copying him. He's incredible.
A lot of people are copying.
Yes, he's really good. Although he, to be fair, copied many people for that harassment. Both of his covers are actually an evolution of other things, but it's Pig Destroyer. It's good. There's this album. Have you seen the album cover Pig Destroyer? It is.
I can see his influences.
Yeah.
And I knew what he was doing. Back years ago, I didn't know he was 20 years old at the time. That
Yeah.
blew me away when I figured that out. And then he put out 2 good books. We're not talking about next great American novel here, and I think he knows that. It's not a literary masterpiece. It was a good, pulpy, fun critique that spoke to a generation of young guys that nobody else was writing to.
So did you read those books in full?
Oh, absolutely.
So I couldn't get through it. I read about, so I do have an 100 page rule. So I think I got 100 pages into Harassment Architecture and I couldn't continue. I just didn't get it. I didn't get what I was like. People raise this reference all the time, but they never say, what is that book about? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody tell me what that book is?
To me, it's sort of a disjointed retelling of the Turner Diaries. That's essentially what it boils down to. And he took sort of this schizo, infinite jest approach to it. If you can enjoy the jokes and the meme culture of that time, it's a great read. I wouldn't call it a great literary work, of course, but it spoke to the generation at the time. And when it came out, it was very relevant and captured a lot of thoughts in that moment So, I mean, 50,000 copies, he knew what he was doing. He didn't have a publisher, he didn't have a marketing team, any of that stuff. So when I look at what's coming out now, and I look at the numbers, 1,000 copies here, 2,000 copies there, I think there's enough people in Nick Fuentes' audience, Bap's audience, Tucker Carlson's audience. You get 1% of them buying books, and you're going to have 1 million book sales. I think that the quality of writing.
Wait a second. This is why you really should read this David Comfort book, because he breaks it down. Do you know what the circulation of Paris Review is?
I would guess probably 4, maybe 5 figures.
Okay, but give me a number.
Let's say 10 to 15,000.
That's exactly right. It's 10,000 worldwide. 10,000. It's nothing. No one reads the Paris Review. And that's the best literary journal in the world. The Tin House, these literary journals, they have nothing. No one fucking reads it. And it's probably for the reason that you're saying. The reason is because they suck. And you're saying what happens if we do it well, but it's also these number games, you're saying 1% you're going to sell 1 million copies. That's not true. What do you mean?
I think so. If you combine everyone right of Mao under the age of 40, I think there's plenty of guys out there that read and would read something if it actually had substance was written to them.
But 5% of people read at all, right? So
I think 5% are out there buying novels that are coming out today. I think the majority of people are reading works that are 20 years old, 50 years old. I think you have plenty of people reading, but they're reading Stoicism and Dune and Hemingway.
You got to wonder, how much does Hemingway sell a year? That would be a good indicator, because that would tell you what percentage of the population buys a book at all. Or at least the male population. What percentage of the male population goes through to actually buy something?
I think it's higher than the numbers that we've been seeing. I think there's a lot of guys using Audible to, listen to Nietzsche,
which is great, which
Marcus Aurelius.
And you got to do everything on Audible. Everything you do immediately sound. Because that is such a game changer. Being able to listen to these things, that's all I do. I don't read. I only listen.
You have to put it in the format your audience is already at. You have to go where they are. And I'm not here to save literature. I'm not anybody. I'm just a guy. I'm just here to drag it out of the yoga class and throw it back into a bar fight. Let's make it real again.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. So this magazine, are you going to print it?
Yeah, it's a quarterly print magazine. We actually have a design studio. You see Locks Populi commenting in the chat. His design studio is helping us put it together.
Okay. And so has one been printed yet?
Yeah, the first edition will be dropping this fall. So we'll have the pre-order next month.
Okay. And who do you have in it?
Right now, we've got Worst Boyfriend Ever, Mishima's Head. So a bunch of people you probably heard of. Howling Mutant's probably going to be kicking us over some of his stuff.
Okay. But so Howling Mutant is not really fiction, right?
I don't know. Have you followed him on Substack?
Yeah.
Everyone knows his Twitter.
No, dude, he's been on the show. I hope you know. And he shilled his Substack, and I read his Substack religiously. He rarely posts on it, but they're sort of expanded versions of his posts. So you're right. I guess
he's a much better writer than people would imagine. He's a master fucking poster, but his writing, when
is good.
He actually look at the long form, he's great.
Absolutely. No, I'm a complete Howling Mutant super fan. So no, I will, no disagreement there. And his shit's hilarious. No, the most recent Substack thing he posted was great. I shared it. I just screen capped it because he's actually very Bukowski. because Bukowski was also doing those sort of bits and bobs. He does these like bits and bobs, and bits and bobs are great for today's world. All right, so who do you like in your stable of writers? Tell me about what stimulates you about Rambo? What do you like about Dan Baltic? Or you're obviously inspired by this scene. So like, what are the people that you're really excited about publishing? And do you edit them?
So we don't do developmental editing. If you need that, then just go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
I'll proofread it. I'll, embellish a little bit here and there if I see something that could be worded a little bit better, but I'm not going to do developmental editing. We'll do that in the writer's workshop, but whatever you're sending me as a submission should already have the plot, the wording, the composition, and prose that it needs. Unfortunately, I'm not getting paid for this right now, so I don't have time to teach you how to write. But I think the people that excite me right now, Rambo, obviously, because he knows how to tell the truths in a way that are not just entertaining, gives you insight. Even if you've never been to Hollywood, never worked in that scene, he can make it interesting for you as a common reader. He's really good at putting things in the layman's terms. And Mishima's Head is probably one of my favorites. He's a guy that's kind of new to me. PCM Christ and Mishima Head, they're a couple guys that I ran into in the last maybe 6 months to a year. Mishima's Head's a fellow Marine, so we've chewed some of the same dirt, and that's probably a little bit biased there. But I don't really write about war.
What do you write about?
I write about how much it sucks to be a wage slave in 2025. Yeah. I've been writing a little bit of an ongoing series where I'm hitting on this, everyone's saying, where's the next Blood Meridian? So as a satire to kind of poke at that, I wrote in Cormac McCarthy's style from the perspective of the Comanche. But the entire book, every single character is the judge. We're using historical accuracy here. And the reality is that we romanticized the Native Americans for so many decades when they're actually pretty fucking awful. So the entire series of stories, which is slowly evolving into a book now, is just me taking it and dialing it up to 11. Violence, taboo, transgression.
Wow. I've got a recommendation for you. Have you heard of a book? Again, I'm a gonzo guy. So there's a guy I've tried to get on this podcast named Richard Grant. And he's sort of like the last thing that we would have as like a true gonzo journalist, in the sense that he doesn't have any style really, but he's like adventure journalist, right? He's got a book called God's Middle Finger, where he goes to the northern Sierra Madre in Mexico. So just south of Arizona. And apparently those mountains there are still to this day totally lawless. This is recent. This is like a recent book. And he goes down there and he finds that in the Sierra Madre, this is like where Sinaloa is, no rules. Like you can just get murdered by anybody at any time. And he finds the last remaining people who witnessed the Apaches, because the Apaches, that was their final stand. The real Apaches ended up in the northern Sierra Madre in Mexico in like the 1930s or something, or like, this was the end of the Apache. And later on, the shitty gravy train Apaches who were like living in Oklahoma or wherever, they went and visited the actual real Apaches. Like the shitty casino Apaches visited like the actual murderer Apaches. And the Oklahoma shitty Apaches were so terrified of them, they thought of the real Apaches as their like boogeyman. Like the stories they told about like their boogeyman were like their own people. Because their own people, there's like a woman who witnessed this whole thing in the Sierra Madre. She was like, they were just total killers. You know, like they would come to your house, they would kill your child, they would steal your children, they would rape your wife, skin her alive, murder her, put the skin on the, up for display. Like they were absolute killers. And they would just hide in the woods and they would come in your house and fucking just completely kill you. And the last of those people died just killed by the Mexican army in the northern Sierra Madre in Mexico, which is really funny. So you're right. It's like these old stories of the Mexicans. I mean, Blood Meridian touches on that a little bit, though, doesn't it?
A little bit, but even for his generation, he was being very careful about who he chose to villainize. Everyone in America thinks they're part native, and it's weird to me. Every boomer is saying, "Oh yeah, we're 164th Blackfeet or Crow or whatever," and then they get their 23andMe down the road, and it's zero. I think there was a push back in like the 60s and 70s when you look at, Marlon Brando had that Native American activist accept his award for him, and Clint Eastwood almost punched her. There was this weird push during the hippie movement, whether it was connecting with the earth and all that shit, or whatever it ended up being. It seemed to me like a lot of white people wanted to claim Native to seem like they're not racist. And the reality that I'm trying to put out there is we should have killed all of them. They're horrible people. So I'm sort of taking historical events from that period in pioneer days, and I'm just putting them within the vessel of fiction. But every single horrible thing I put in there, every rape, every murder, all of it's based on a real event.
Yeah. So totally. So yeah, I see. It's funny that you're saying that even Cormac was pulling his punches.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone
Yeah.
says, "Oh, that's the bloodiest book ever. You'll never be able to adapt it to film." No, he was pulling his punches, and there's no other way that I can read it. I've read that book probably 4 or 5 times front to back. He
I've
had
read
a
it
very
twice.
clear agenda. He had a villain picked from the beginning, and he worked his way there towards the end.
Who was the
You can
judge?
see
Do you
that.
think the judge was the villain?
That was his villain. Yeah. Although you see, he put a lot of work into making the judge kind of likable in certain ways. He had some of the best dialogue. He had the best quotes. It's sort of the Verhoeven Heinlein effect.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have this writer, and you're going to transmit your ego to the page, to your protagonists, no matter who you are. You look at like Jeff Polonic. Tries to make Tyler Durden a bad guy. He's warning. He's what you don't want to end up like. The villain ends up subverting the entire message because the writer's blind spots are that they don't realize everything they hate from what the audience loves.
Nah, I mean, dude, look at Verhoeven. We're going to use Verhoeven as an example here, I imagine. Listen to his interviews. He says, "I love war." He says, "I love it," because he grew up with it in some way. I forget if he was in war or
He
experienced
loves war
war.
if it's killing Nazis.
No, he says, "I love war." He says, "I love war and violence." So
He
if he
hates
loves war and
Nazis.
violence,
Just like everyone post World War II, look how he tried to frame his adaptation.
yeah, but okay, so you're saying that Verhoeven is trying to skewer this person,
I don't think he's trying to skewer Heinlein. I think he's trying to skewer anyone who read Heinlein.
no, not Heinlein, not Heinlein. Wait. How is time out? You're way ahead of me. How is he trying to skewer Heinlein?
I'm saying he's not. I'm saying he's trying to skewer the kind of reader who read Starship Troopers and wanted to go out and kill bugs that are essentially an analogy for communists, right?
You just don't go that far. The best example of this is such a phenomenon that needs a name, right? We need a name for the phenomenon of the work of art that is presented as an ironic explication of some sort of right-wing idea that is supposedly a critique of that thing. So, Starship Troopers, Blood Meridian, all these things we're saying. I think my favorite example of it is Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, the song, which is supposedly this sardonic, born in the USA, but I'm a veteran who was sent to kill, Vietnamese people, but actually this is really unfair, blah, blah, blah. People bring this thing up all the time as if it's like these liberal people are trying to, skewer or make an example out of these right-wing people. But I don't think it's that simple. I don't think that they're actually like, does when Springsteen is writing that song, is it actually meant to make everybody sad? Like, no, like he knows
Meant
that
to make money.
right, but he knows that like for me, it's like, how a perfume, what do they say about great perfumes? Every great perfume has something rotten in it. Like it has something like dead in it. It's like beaver anus or whatever is like in every fucking great perfume. That's to me the same thing as this. It's like every great piece of art has something in it that's like rotten. And that's what they're doing. Like they're taking something that they're making it complicated. They're making it complex. They're making it not just saccharine whatever. They're giving you sort of like all sides. And I think that that's just what makes good art. And I don't interpret it as necessarily like I mean, you're right that Cormac probably at some level. Okay, so who is somebody that you think isn't doing that? Like, is there any based writer out there that's like not doing what you're saying?
Not one that's gonna have their name known and published by anyone. They're out there, but they're all indie. You're also not gonna see anyone funded by Peter Thiel that's not gonna be holding punches either. No matter whatever money you take, there's going to be terms to that.
Of
Even
course.
if it's a gift, there's going to be favors. So I see these little ecosystems developing where even in the alt-lit scene, I can see where they're taking their villains and what their ideologies are. This is such a fractured movement. Anything you do, you're going to make enemies. Very fickle, small space. We're not trying to be far right writers. We're trying to write fiction for guys, whether they agree with the politics that we hold or not. Like, I don't give a shit if you're a liberal. If you can fucking write something that actually has substance to it, we'll publish it. But
Okay.
I think that a lot of what you're seeing in Hollywood, some of the people that we look back on now and we think that they were a liberal punching right, that was just a conservative maintaining the post-World War II consensus.
Okay. So what do you mean by that? A conservative, like who would be that? Like Clint Eastwood?
If you look back 70s, 80s, a lot of that stuff was propaganda. It doesn't take much to look at that, see that. If you look at our generation, I'm soon here a millennial too. So before a lot of my generation went to war, we had propaganda for Iraq. We had 300. Kingdom of Heaven was weird because it was both an anti-war and pro-war movie, depending on who was watching it, right? You had Troy, and then you had Gladiator leading up to this. And then you look at the left, and V for Vendetta is their quintessential film that they've based their entire worldview on. So you have one shot, that entire half of generation. For the rest of their lives, they're cosplaying as V, and they think every enemy in the world is some old white guy. So it's these cultural touchstones on impressionable young minds. My generation was watching people jump out of the Twin Towers and you're pissed. We didn't care necessarily how much Iraq was involved. Let's be honest with ourselves. We know they didn't have WMDs, right? We can look back now and say that. But at the time, I don't think we even cared so much. We just wanted to punish somebody. And unfortunately, we allowed that to lead us into unjust wars and proxies for Israel to achieve their ends. But at the time, all Hollywood was doing was cashing in. It's a mixture of propaganda to promote an agenda, yes, but ultimately they care more about money than anything else.
I think that that's wishful, man. They don't care about money more than anything else. If they care about money more than anything else, they would make super patriot films, which they're basically doing now. I mean, now they're going into this hollow Americanism thing. This like very just rah rah, Sydney Sweeney jeans. I mean, like that's what everything is going to shift to, as I've been predicting for a long time. But I think these guys who make films who are true artists, like Verhoeven, he's not trying to forward any agenda. Of course, he's being influenced by the people around him. You're completely right that when the regime needs to sell the war on terror, they need to sell GWAT, you're going to suddenly see a bunch of shit around that's weirdly mimics this, right? And that's because there's a lot of money in that moment to do that, right? There's a lot of money around. And the people who are weak, the people who have weak souls, they succumb to it. And even the people who have strong souls, like Verhoeven, they succumb a little bit to it, right? So there'll be a little bit of leakage to whoever that patron is at that time. But that's always been the case. That will never not be the case. As you grow, if this magazine is successful, you will have someone who gives you money. And that person's perspective is going to matter to you, right? I mean, no matter what.
Our mission is we're not taking money. So either it succeeds on its own merit or it lasts for a few years.
But what is its own merit? Its own merit is subscribers, right?
Quality. No, I don't see subscribers as the metric I'm chasing. Sure, long term, you want it to be profitable, but if we hinge our mission on that, we're going to be subverted on some level, whether we want to be or not. This isn't about making money. It's a passion project. If it becomes profitable down the road, awesome. If it spends 5 years barely breaking even, I'm fine with that. It's more about resonating with the young guys and getting reading again. Anything to do on the business side is completely secondary to this mission.
Okay.
Like if Peter Thiel drops off a duffel bag of cash, I'm going to throw it back at him.
But what if it's not Peter Thiel? What if it's somebody you agree with?
I don't care. Because there's still going to be an agenda.
Yeah, right. But I'm saying, like, no matter who's okay, but then so if it's completely an act of complete charity, it's no money. You're not going to be influenced by any money at all. Like, fine, okay. So how do then who keeps the lights on? I mean, like, how do you do it?
Almost nothing.
Okay. So people are just going to submit things that'll just be free.
Well, the Substack has a paid option, but we're not boxing people out.
Okay. So do you paywall anything?
We do paywall after a week. You got a week to read it for free.
Got it. Okay. So you can like log in and read. Okay. So the print version, though, that's got to be like pretty expensive.
$20.
Okay. Oh, so all right. So there is like you want people to sell. So where are you going to, is it going to be pure just internet?
As far as promoting or?
No, like how to sell it. Are you going to try to like put it in bookstores or anything?
Well, we do have a pretty creative guerrilla marketing campaign we're about to kick into. And I don't want to spoil the surprise because it relies entirely on ambushes. But it'll be a mix. We have a hybrid approach. We're thinking about who our average reader is and the psychographics in that and how we carry this out.
Okay. All right. Well, very cool, man. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that, in the movie where the biopic of the musician and they get successful and then all the money comes in and then everything starts to change. Like, what I love about Bukowski so much is later in his life, he said that happened to him, right? Because it did. Hollywood came for him, but he was already 55 years old. He was so old. And he was like, they were just too late. He'd already formed as a person and they couldn't get to him. So he never sold out really in any way, you know? And I always love that. I love that he never sold out. But on the other hand, you read his letters, he was viciously trying to get paid all the time. He was constantly trying to get his stuff published somewhere, right? So it's this tension between commercialism and viable art, but it's like, I don't know, man. All right. Well, so when will the Hard R magazine be ready to purchase?
On the fall equinox next month, September 22nd.
Okay. And did you see this whole equinox thing that people did here? The summer equinox party?
I did see that, yeah.
What'd you think of all that?
It had more than I would expect from these spaces. Usually it's going to be like 5 weird, nerdy dudes showing up somewhere, saying there's going to be 300 people, and one guy awkwardly reading out a little bit of his self-published book that no one's ever fucking read. So I was impressed it had a little more organization and more people showed up than I had anticipated. I hope it keeps growing. I hope the Ritual Press becomes a bigger player.
Have you been to any of these events?
We've been talking about maybe going to one this fall or in the winter. If that comes about, we'll see. We're not really trying to organize events and stuff like that yet. We're going to wait till we have more momentum. I'd rather get it right the first time than set something up and 5 people show up and it's a letdown and you kill your entire momentum.
I'm saying, have you been to any other events?
As far as alt-lit, not recently, no.
Yeah, there was like a period. So what do you think of like Delicious Tacos?
I think he has a good way of grasping what the current angst is among the youth and being able to capture that, even though he's a pretty older dude. Like, I'm getting closer to 40 myself, but he's in his 40s, pretty old guy. He's got this definite millennial style to his writing. And I see him sort of transitioning towards trying to write towards the Zoomers. But I think that there's a vacuum right now. Anyone can look out there and see that BAP's on the decline, hasn't really put anything out there. There's space for someone to rise up. I'm not trying to be the guy. I want to find the guy and help promote him. I'm already on my way to retirement. I don't need this magazine to succeed. But I'm hoping that I can find a few guys younger than myself with some grit, determination, and potential that we can mentor and lift up. I think that's where the future's at. A lot of these guys in alt-lit are probably trying to squeeze out the final drops out of that stone.
I mean, what do you think about him as a writer, though? Like, what do you think about like the actual content?
Me as a writer, he wouldn't be on my radar. If I'm looking at the greater literary scene, I'm picky, man. My bar is pretty high. For alt-lit, he's pretty decent, but that bar is kind of low, isn't it?
I don't know, man. I don't read any of this shit, to be honest with you. I mean, like, I don't read.
I read The Pussy. It had some good stories in it, but there was no grander plot. He wasn't pushing on any literary boundaries. It reminded me of a lot of other books.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great stylist, in my opinion. I think Tacos is a really good stylist. I think he sort of I think if you've read Bronze Age Mindset, sort of the genius and the frustration with it is that written in baby talk, it's written in like baby talk, like weird baby words. And you're just kind of like, ugh, why? Uh, Tacos is a little bit more of a refined approach at like drawing the parallel or the drawing together the internet parlance and written literary parlance. And he does a good job of being very brief. I've learned a lot from him on like sentence structure and shit. I think he's very good at that type of thing. But yeah, the content is sort of endlessly, it's like a gamer, he's like a gamer. So it's just sort of endlessly just like a cycle happening in your own mind. It never like leaves your own mind, which is, I think, what will prevent him from ever being like a great writer is he just never leaves his own head, which is very true of a lot of these guys, honestly. So I'm trying to get out of you, which of these guys do you like? Like, which of these dudes is your guy that you really enjoy reading?
My favorite right now is Mishima's Head by far.
Okay, so what is Mishima's Head, right?
One of our writers is really solid. So Mishima's Head is another jarhead who spent a lot of time in Japan. Of course, he's really into Yu-Gi-Oh! But he's not copying the style like a lot of people do. He's not rehashing Yu-Gi-Oh! Mishima. He's got his own style to it. And it's raw, it's gritty. It actually has depth, which is more than I can say of a lot of writing right now. He's my favorite. We also have Worst Boyfriend Ever, if you hadn't noticed.
Yeah, he's commenting right now. Worst Boyfriend Ever is now commenting.
Yep. And he has a second book coming out, Worst Boyfriend Ever, this fall, a sequel to his debut novel.
And he's a young homosexual man, from what I've heard. No, just kidding. I don't really understand who he is, but he writes about like being mean to girls.
He's like,
how dare you, Worst Boyfriend Ever? How dare you? No,
he's the one grabbing the torch from Tacos.
Got it. Okay. And is it literary or is it sort of like date doctory? Like what is his stuff? I've never read it.
His stuff is essentially auto fiction, but he has some interesting ways of touching on taboos. He wrote a story in our Substack about killing dogs that's definitely not really about killing dogs for those that can read between the lines. So he has an interesting way of playing around with psychology in his writing that I like.
What's it about?
You got to read it. I'm not going to spoil it.
It's not about killing dogs, but killing women. For real. No. All right. So
I love women. I see a lot of the incel lit out there where it's just like, all right, I get it, dude. You're secretly gay, whatever.
Oh, it's just so boring. It's like, look, man, the rule is if you fucked a certain number of girls, you're super horny for guys talking about fucking girls. But after you've fucked that many girls, a guy talking about fucking that many girls is like a food reviewer talking about McDonald's. It's just like, yeah, I've eaten McDonald's. I don't need an elaborate explanation of how amazingly tasty McDonald's is. We've all done it. Sex is like shitting, It's completely stupid to talk about. It's boring. It's completely boring. But I don't know. This guy, people keep talking about this Worst Boyfriend Ever. So maybe he's good. I'm not criticizing him. I've never read his stuff, so I'm curious. Is this? Are you going to try to publish books, or this is always going to be a magazine?
So this is always going to be a magazine, but a lot of our writers either already have published a book or they're working on a manuscript. And we've got a writer's workshop to help them turn their ideas into a written work. So we'll be helping promote them. We've been making some connections in the industry with literary agents so that we can actually set these guys up for success. I think if you can get a big enough following on Substack with a proof of concept that you've got enough people loyal to you, I think you can overcome
Yeah,
that problem when it comes to traditional publishing.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right. If you look at Hollywood right now, there's a couple people in Hollywood making movies who started as YouTubers, and they're making so much better movies than the people who played the game, because that was like their king move, like they were like, well, you're a stupid middle of the road managerial dumbass. Look at my following of 3 million people. Are you really going to tell me I don't know what I'm doing? And so that allows them to sort of go on top of the stupid female managerial gatekeeper. Um, and yeah, so I think you're right. Like, if you can show, like, I'm a fiction writer and look at how, like, Worst Boyfriend Ever, I think is one of these. If you can show I have a serious audience, that really is a way to usurp that, like, middle manager role. So yeah, I think that's a good.
Just make it a business decision.
Yeah, exactly. It's
We
like, are
talk
you really gonna
about
say we can't do this? Like, yeah.
if you're a straight white dude that doesn't hate himself, you're gonna have a uphill climb trying to get published by the big five, right? But if you make a strictly business decision, that's a completely different conversation, right? Right now, a big part of the problem in traditional publishing, they're trying to survive Amazon. A lot of their books are failing, and they're having to hope that 1 out of 5 will make up for the other 4. If you don't have 50,000 followers on TikTok and Twitter, they're not going to care how good your book is. They want to be able to look at your following size and how engaged they are in your Substack, and be able to plug those numbers into an algorithm and predict how many book sales you're going to produce, right? So if you can get a big enough audience on Substack and elsewhere that's engaged, and you're already putting out content similar to what you're going to be publishing, they can look at that and say, all right, we know at least X amount of people are going to pick up a copy. So you can get around a lot of these problems, glasses wearing HR grievance goblins. All you got to do is,
Yeah, you need the juice. You need the juice. You need some juice in order to get over them. I always remember I had this meeting. I used to be a vice writer, so I had some clout. I had some, like, cool points. I didn't know what I had because I was making so little money. And the thing you and I disagree about is the power of money, which I truly believe in.
I love money. I just don't give a shit about making it in a magazine. I make money doing my own thing.
Okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree on this. But I was making $50 an article to write for Vice and LA Weekly, and it was such bullshit. So I
How
just
many
didn't.
cents a word is that? Like 5 cents a
Yeah,
word?
it literally it'd be even worse than you could imagine. And they were treating it like the New York Times. I had to do like 5 rounds of edits. Because why? Because all the women who ran it were overeducated, journalism majors. So they had learned the craft from actual people. So they were basically, like, doing the craft downwards on me when I was making $50 a fucking article. So it was good in a way because I learned what they were doing, but it was also completely absurd because, like, no person who doesn't have a trust fund can do that, So I was just like, fuck that. I'm going to follow the money. But in any case, I can't remember what we were talking about. What were we just talking about? What were we just talking about?
Not selling out.
I don't think there's any such thing as selling out, but
That's the thing. I get paid, probably it breaks down to about $40 an hour on the folks that hire me on the freelance side. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been in this for a while, so I figured out how to systematize things and how I can make sure I'm hitting at least X amount of money. So the way I look at it is I'm getting paid for my experience, my knowledge, my judgment, my intuition on top of my writing. And I've determined that number in an hour of my time is worth at least $40. So I'm not going to sacrifice that to have someone pitch me 4 cents a word. But I can do that now. These young guys, I keep telling them, don't quit your day job. Start getting paid peanuts for articles that are about stuff that's boring as hell. But what it's going to do is the reps of having like meaty deadlines and become a serious writer and write about things that are just sort of the moment is going to make you think and grow as a writer. So yeah,
Totally,
you might
man.
make $50 an article, but
Dude,
it's making you better.
the Beatles, the whole thing of the Beatles is what made them so good is when they were 23 years old, they went to Berlin and they played a show a night as just some shitty cover band, you know? I mean, some shitty band that was playing bullshit hits. That's how you get good. That's how you fucking become good. You know? Like, dude, I published a book. I try to not tell people about this. I published a really, this is how I know this. I published a really shitty self-published book about 12 years ago. And it was the first thing I'd ever written. I wasn't a good writer. I was a fucking piece of shit writer. Why was I a good writer? Because I woke up one day and decided I'm a good writer? You know, like, why would I believe that? And it took me 10 years of writing commercially, writing for Vice, writing for LA Weekly, writing for my own blogs to get good, you know? And so it took a long time of doing it commercially, of doing it as a real career to get good at it. And I really don't think that that means I sold out. I think it just means that I learned the craft of it, you know?
I
Like
don't think getting a job in writing counts as selling out, though.
yeah, I don't
Honestly.
either. I agree. I don't think you're
The
right.
the thing is, if you didn't get to go through college for a creative writing class, you never had someone bully you for how bad you're writing.
Exactly.
If you
Exactly.
self-publish a book, it's great. So, like, your mom, your dad, your friends are always gonna say it's great.
Yes.
You have to open your scoop up to a big enough audience to get people to
Say it
really
sucks. Yeah.
really tell you
Yeah.
where you need to go. I tell a lot of these guys, self-publish a book, learn the process, have some fun, learn why you suck so that you can start getting better. You know, start putting it out there so that you can have people essentially point out all your blind spots.
Yeah.
If you
And
can get an FFA, then give yourself one the hard way.
totally. And and much better to do it that hard way because the MFA is going to lie to you. You know, I mean, the MFA is not going to tell you how to be good. The MFA is going to tell you how to be bad. And so much better to cut your teeth against the real world. You know, like actually, dude, I remember so many lessons from these LA Weekly articles I used to write. I used to write these LA Weekly articles and they were shit. I mean, they were fucking garbage, but I would go do cool shit. I mean, I would go like one of the best ones ever was, have you ever been to LA?
I used to be stationed just south of it. Yeah.
Okay. So there's this bridge over the LA River and you can see that people live under it because it's like protected, but there's no way to get in there. So one time there was a ladder and anyway, gonzo, I figured out how to go in there and there was all kinds of people living in there and, you know, it was so weird. And I wrote this gonzo piece about it that if you read today, you would cringe so hard. You would be like, who the fuck does this guy think he like, shut up. You know, it was all this like meaning and poetry and, you know, like all this fucking bullshit about like these people living under the bridge and whatever. But, you know, doing that, people would talk so much shit. The comments would just be full of people being like, this guy's a complete idiot. You know, like this guy doesn't even, I remember one time I called the birds of LA, cranes and storks, right? Because I was like, what do I just said it. Apparently there's no cranes and storks in LA. It's egrets. There's only egrets here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like 20 people were like, who is this fucking, you know, like guy who moves here? He thinks he knows LA. There's not storks in LA. Blah, blah. And that was such a like, now every time I write something, I make sure to Google like that level of specificity because I was publicly embarrassed, you know, so it was like good to learn that. So,
Well, half of writing is being a keen observer, right? So I think there's like a rite of passage where the older guys that came up in the day in a very different environment and had it pretty rough in their own way, they got bullied they got hazed in their own way. It teaches you how to pay attention to things that a normal person's not. So your job as a writer, you're finding the mundane object that it can connect with every single reader maybe you have an Amazon Prime Unabomber. So every single time Amazon shows up to your house, now you got to be nervous about getting that package on your doorstep. You're finding a mundane object in everyone's lives that no one's ever approached from that view before. But that requires you to be a very keen observer. A lot of why I see there's a lot of veterans starting to pop up in this space, like Kashima. So if we were out on patrol and something felt off, your spidey sense and tingle, but you don't have any physical evidence to give you a reason why. Doesn't fucking matter. I'm going to trust my Marines, and we're going to do a SLLS halt. So stop, look, listen, smell, right? And we're trying to observe what it is that's wrong in the environment that we can't quite put our finger on before we push forward. Learning to be an observer like that of things that the normal person is going to completely block out at their day-to-day routine while their heads are buried in their fucking phone. That is part of what makes you a good writer.
Absolutely. And makes you a good soldier, right? I mean, it's like developing that instinct, kind of.
There's overlap.
Yeah. I mean, look, I know nothing about being a soldier at all, but, so, do you write about that? Do you write about being a soldier at all?
Not really. I feel there's so many other, bigger badass dudes and all the fucking Navy SEAL assholes that have cashed in on that. Um, I've been slowly working on sort of an autobiography disguised as a novel for about 5 years with my time overseas, my time as a bail bondsman, my time going through cancer treatment as a bail bondsman,
Wow.
and processing all of that stuff with the hindsight and going through divorce, all of the
Wow.
best things. Yeah.
You
All
had
that
cancer treatment, divorce, and that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I got really close to the,
Jesus.
going down a dark path.
I could only imagine. I would not blame you for going down
Yeah.
the dark path if that's what you were going through, Matt.
So
That's
I've
insane.
written stuff on that. I haven't put as much of it on Substack because it's really personal. And yeah, I changed the names so the guys that were, went over with me didn't come home. I want to treat it with respect and dignity. I don't want to cash in on my fallen brothers. And
Yeah.
I've seen so many vet bros doing that.
Yeah.
And, everyone's already written on the war. I don't think that I can write about it better than somebody that already has, like Bing West or someone.
Mhm.
I can write about how it personally affected me, though. And I can correlate how it changed me as a father, how it affected going through cancer treatment, all that stuff. I can write about that because I'm the one who lived it. But I think we've already had enough guys write about GWAT.
Yeah.
I want to write about what's 5 years from now in the US look like to your average guy, forklift certified wage slave. AI has replaced 40% of jobs. We've had another 3.5 years up advance. What's that look like? And what does a working class uprising look like?
Mhm.
How fucking brutal is that going to be? We all want things to change, and we're all starting to sort of see that most of the solution is left or spend poses, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's a lot of folks out there that are looking at, 5 years from now, that might actually happen. But as someone who's been in combat and seen what human beings are capable of, the animal that lives within your ribs, what actually comes out when you haven't eaten in 5 days, there's a lot of brutality that I think people aren't prepared for, and it happens real fucking quick. And the people who are prepping, that are buying Tom Clancy books, that are sort of having a circle jerk about the apocalypse, they have no idea coming if this actually happens. And I don't want it to happen. I would much rather that we had some way to fix things that didn't involve this path, But looking 5 years down the road, it's easy to see writing on the wall if you work adjacent to tech and marketing, right? So I've self-taught programming, done the coding boot camp because I can see it on the wall, got machine learning classes. Partly out of curiosity, I want to see what my replacement looks like, right? It's also just job opportunities. I don't think people understand that AI is like a filter and we're all not going to make it through. I'm not worried about it as a writer because it's only good bad writers. But what I am worried about is the second and third order effects of it. You start getting paralegals, freight brokers, accounting, a lot of people that don't realize they're about to not have a job in 5 years, all going into HVAC and plumbing, diluting the wages there while we have everything going on with H-1Bs and the immigration problem. 5 years from now, it doesn't look good. And I'm not a black pillar, but 5 years from now, you can relate this back to Orwell writing 1984 in his time. And we say, well, he predicted a lot of things. You got a few wrong. A lot of it was so obvious to him, but everyone else couldn't see it until it had already happened. And I feel like we're nearing another point like that where we're all starting to sense nothing ever happens. But I think it feels different now. When I sit down and talk to the average person, have a personal conversation about what's going on in the world, there's a tension in the air that didn't exist 5 years ago or 2 years ago. Something is approaching on the horizon. I don't know if that looks like a working class uprising. I don't know if it's AI taking 40% of the workforce out. But we are at a very important moment in history of some kind. We're like the forward to a very interesting book. We're in this sort of period of time that feels kind of drawn out and like we're stuck internally waiting on something. But we're on the precipice of a change that's going to be just as great as the Industrial Revolution.
So, how much of what you're saying is coming from frustration with Trump?
So
How much of
I
it?
don't
You
really,
remind me so much
I
of
don't
my
give as
friend.
much importance to him. I don't give a whole lot of importance to him. He's not my guy, obviously, but I don't give him more credit than what he's due. I think a lot of it right now, people are placing it on Trump because he's the face they see in TV all day and in the news. And they're attributing a lot of things to him. More of what actually matters right now is where's Silicon Valley heading? Where's the workforce heading? That's the stuff that affects all of us, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on. When I write dystopian stuff about AI and the workforce, at least a third of my readers are liberal. So you have a very obvious
Yeah.
populist
Yep.
thing going on. I think there's a
Mhm.
populist movement. We all thought Trump was populist in 2016. We all know that's not true now.
Okay,
I
no,
think
no, but see, this is what I'm telegraphing. So it seems like you are frustrated with Trump. So why? You remind me so much of my friend who's also a veteran, and we have this discussion all the time. So I'm not saying Trump has been great, but I'm not advocating, but I'm just saying why is he not a populist?
a true populist would have widespread support in the majority on both sides of the aisle. Not just a small part of the conservative movement that can swing an election. A populist uprising would be working class, 50, 60% of the entire population agreeing. You'd have ideas that the left supports and the right. So, foreign influence, we obviously has support from both sides. People not being able to pay rent is an issue that is not political. That's
Totally.
a populist issue. Having your jobs offshored or given to H-1Bs is not a right-wing or left-wing issue.
Totally. I agree. I agree.
So this is the populism that I see on the horizon.
But the sides are gonna shift, that's the thing. It's like, you're saying whenever has there been this uprising that you're talking about? I mean, you could say it was Nazi Germany, but it really wasn't, right? Because there was how many people were against that, and it's in how many different ways, and it's a total destruction of Europe, whatever it is. I mean, it's like, okay, is the Bolshevik Revolution, is that a populist uprising? I mean, it's like, when does this ever happen? You know?
I think it would have happened already, but we are so focused on paying our bills, watching Netflix. A lot of people out there, as long as they have enough money for weed, Netflix, and rent, good. They're not happy. They're far from content. But as long as they have that and they can hop on their PlayStation, I think a lot of the angst and the frustration is sort of sedated. And if these folks spend 2 weeks
Absolutely. No, porn, weed. Without
Yep.
porn, we would have long ago had this, in my opinion. I think
So last year, I went to West North Carolina, East Tennessee immediately after the hurricane, Hurricane Helene hit.
Mhm.
And I worked with a whole confederation of groups that normally don't get along, and we all put aside our petty bullshit to do something good. We saw the government wasn't providing an adequate response. So instead of bitching about it on Twitter, we went out there and did something. So you had Old Glory Club, Pete Quinones' guides. You had Patriot Front, PW Guerrilla, myself, Native Prime, a whole lot of people out there, hundreds of guys. Boots on the ground immediately in the aftermath. Being somewhere that didn't have power or cell service for almost 2 months, you see a very different human. And I'm not just talking about the haulers, up in Kitsikan National Forest, but even in more population dense areas like Swannanoa, Asheville, Black Mountain, Burnsville, running into people that haven't had their phone working or their TV in weeks gives you an idea of where we would have already been by now, politically.
Mhm. I don't know, man. I think I've been down these paths of nihilism. No, I'm not saying you're a nihilist, but
Far from it.
the thing is just you have to ask. This is what I say to my friend who reminds me exactly of you all the time. Does the current system offer the possibility of something good, right? And I'm completely with you, man. I think all of these the private equity, the total destruction of the public square, the utter inability for a normal person to afford a house, all the gay shit, all of that stuff is absolutely satanic, and it absolutely calls for the uprising of the common people, right? And I completely agree. I am so on board with that, and I advocate for that in every possible way that I can. But at the same time, dude, I was a fucking miserable copywriter at horrible agencies. I was fucking wanted to kill everybody all the time, blah, 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 blah. But then I started my own thing and it kind of worked. It kind of fucking worked. I feel like in America, you still can do your own thing. It really is possible. It's not impossible to try to do something creative. I'm sorry. And to make it. You still can do that. So it's what other system, and I agree, look, all the shit, again, I'm completely agreeing with you. But it's not, to me, I don't think America is a lost cause to the point where we need to have a fascist revolution. And where's that going to get us? I mean, the communists, they tried it. It fucking sucked. Yeah, you ever go to Cuba? It's fucking terrible. You want to talk about becoming a good artist? Totally impossible in Cuba. Cuba doesn't even have a place you can have a fucking decent meal anywhere. I mean, it's the working class revolution is great, but there has to be something following it that isn't just total fucking despair, right?
You have to have a vision for the future.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you're just a reactionary, the moment you win, your entire purpose for existing is gone. And as a reactionary, you're essentially molding yourself in reaction to your opponent, which kind of gives them the power to make you who you are.
Exactly.
You can't exist without your enemy, because then your entire purpose for existence is gone.
Exactly.
I agree with you there. And I'm not the average person in these spaces that has a very clear
Yeah.
fascist leaning, love Hitler, all that stuff. No, I'm a meritocracy guy. I think we can revive America. Maybe it's post America, whatever the chips fall, how they made it. I think one of the biggest problems is allowing everyone to vote.
Yeah. Well,
And
sure.
every system is going to be corrupt eventually because of the human element.
Yeah,
No system that involves human beings that is perfect.
totally.
I'm not trying to bring about the Fourth Reich. I'm looking at more of I guess we could harken back to earlier in the conversation, Starship Troopers flavored meritocracy. But I'm not trying to send everyone in the military to give them the right to vote. But I think that we should have a way to measure character, who is taking from the system and who is producing value, who is uplifting their fellow man, and who is a parasite. And I'm obviously not the person to make the decision on how to define this. But I think on the backside of whatever happens down the road, the people that are left afterward is still standing, come up with a shared vision for the future, shared values, and base who gets to vote on that, who gets to hold office. Sure, maybe it only buys you 300 more years to we're back where we're at now. I think the sooner that this happens, though, the better. I'd rather it happen in my lifetime than have my kids and my grandkids being the ones that have to do this shit.
Yeah. Well, you're right. The democracy is ruined. It's completely untenable. In its current state, it is obviously untenable, and it cannot continue the way that it's continuing now. And how do you run it back? It seems impossible. It has to break, right? It has to break. And that's where I'm on your side in the accelerationist standpoint, where it's like, it cannot continue this way. There has to be some breakage. My personal, I mean, look, you know a lot more about war than I do, but do you think that this will be my last question and we got to go? Do you think that a war, like a global war, could that break this horrible stagnation that we're in?
Could it? Yes, potentially. Could it not? And we still end up screwed? Absolutely. I think there's some parallels here to Dune. That was one of the two books I carried with me on my last combat tour. And aside from the obvious, spice and heroin, the Taliban, the Fremen, one of the biggest parallels that I saw that really clicked more when I came back home in the middle of a cultural war is you have a Cold War that's on the brink of going hot, but all of the powers at play have agreed to restrain the violence to such a narrow effort because you have nukes now,
Yeah.
both within Dune and in reality. So all the parties at play want to restrain the violence to this narrow aperture. So we get on social media every day and we wage this Cold War with each other over political ideology, religion, or anything else. And it's sort of a prophecy, right? I do think there's going to have to be something that's going to break. Democracy has already proven to not work, and we're not going to vote our way out of this. But I'm a pragmatic accelerationist. I'm not going to vote for Newsom and make everyone suffer just because JD Vance isn't racist. I think that's fucking dumb. Weaponized entity is what I preach. Help nature take its course.
Yeah. Accelerationism, basically.
Thermodynamics.
Sure. It
But
will happen eventually.
Why would you shoot yourself and all of your neighbors in the foot just because your guy on your side is your ideal candidate for your niche online community?
Well, and also, as you just said, it can't all just be reaction. You're living in the world that you're living in. Even if you have your perfect revolution, on the other side of that revolution, you're going to have 80 billion problems with whatever society you set up. There's going to be good things. There's going to be fucking horrible things, just like every society ever. And in my personal opinion, the things the Americans set up, there's a lot of terrible things about it. As we've said, there's so many bad things about it. There is so much oppression and bullshit and horrible flaws and total absurdities. But the one thing you can do, there is a certain freedom in there somewhere, right? There's a freedom to be found in that system. And you as an individual, not you personally, just anybody, they have to figure out how much you want to lean against, press against the oppressions of the system, and then how much you want to take the freedom that is offered. Because there is something, there is something in this system that's not totally horrible. And, my path away from being a commie was about, figuring out, okay, well, this system fucking sucks, but if I'm so smart, how do I use it? How do I use the system? Right. And so I think that that's the difficulty of all of us who are disgustingly fed up with what we're doing. It's like, if you really hate the system, why not use it against itself in a way? I mean, I don't know.
And add some beauty to the world.
Right.
Instead of being iconoclasts, why aren't we making beautiful bronze Art Deco statues? Why aren't we contributing white pills in the form of beautiful things? So writing is a part of that. Let's conquer the arts and give people hope and something worth fighting for. I'm a white pill guy, despite being an accelerationist. So I think we can add some beauty back into the world.
Well, we're on the same page, man. We're on the same page. Dude, thank you so much. This was awesome. Great combo. I will post this as an actual episode in the coming days. And I don't know how many people watched it because we don't have the numbers on here. But thanks, man. And dude, you have my full support on the magazine. Let me know how I can help and stay in touch.
Right on. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
For sure, man. Peace.
Well, take care.
Thank you.